in the screen share as well. Yeah, GitHub. Interview use cases. So I have created my L&T Infotech interview questions. I'm just trying to add few more, but if you want, you can go ahead and check. Okay, and if possible, if you are able to do, just also try to write questions for this. Sorry, answers for these. Whatever questions I have written, just try to write the answers as well. You have the option. Okay, be interactive with respect to documents that we are creating. That will help you a lot. Okay,
Okay.
so where are we? Interview questions, RP developer in 30 days. Okay, yeah, the writing is bad. Mm, okay, this is good. So fine, let's go with push to origin, show in Explorer. Okay, Vajrang, August, team 2. So we have week 2 and we are working with robotic enterprise framework. Week 2, okay. Open a local project. I'm trying to open my local project. Week 2 RE framework. Yeah. Let's also open the notes. To use case. Yeah. Okay. Now, what are the activities that we have done till now? Can you please tell me? We have created as is process. We have first analyzed the project. We understood that the project can be automated. We came to an understanding that we have created documentation. We created as is process. We created to be process. We created a PDD document as well. So till now, are we good, or do you need any other explanation?
Good, Vajra.
Okay. So we are doing now with our
Vajra.
code. Yeah, tell me, Satish.
No, Vajra, it's good.
Okay. So here, this is RE framework. So if you want to start with any project, one of your team member or your project lead will start RPA robotic enterprise framework, and they will start initial project for you. Okay, I think this project is already having some information. Let me just see what is that. Okay, so yesterday whatever we have done, this is the one, right? Fine. So now let's understand our project of this particular code, which is yeah, here you go. And week 2. So this is our worksheet. Let's see if we have it or not. Okay, now if you see in this inventory, let's assume that we only require order more items because remaining items are not required to order. Is it right? If there are already items on hand, do we need to order it again? Just give it out a random guess. So we have 396 orders here and I think that's the only one. Now just understand, if we need to create something like this, but if I want to run this at multiple machines, how will I be able to do it? Excuse me. Can I create one dispatcher and multiple performers? Dispatcher will create items to the queue, and performer will use the items and it will execute. Can I do something like that or not?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what I will do, first thing, I will first understand my RE framework. See, this currency logs is not required. I think I can delete it to avoid confusion. Oh shit, 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 shit. Okay, fine, no problem. So here in UI, in this particular RE framework, see, normally we create our own arguments, we create our own variables. Is it right? For every kind of project. But in RE framework, we have some predefined items or predefined variables and arguments. So let's see what are the important things. So today is day 11, RE framework code explanation, and date is 18th August. Okay, explanation. Now there are multiple workflows. We need to see multiple. Here we can see something like this: folders, important folders, workflows, predefined workflows, arguments, variables. Okay, so we can understand that arguments are the locations which can transfer data to and fro to the workflow. Is it right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see what are the existing arguments and how things are moving. So when you are coming with workflows, there are important workflows, something like main workflow, which is the master or master for all workflows, or um, execution starts from main. Okay, now bot should start from main and it should take a path. Like yesterday, we went through a path, right? I will start something and I will initialize and I will get one item and I will process it. The same way, this also will work. Now here in the initialization, there is something called, in the initialization we have, let's go with step by step. Okay. Where is this? Open in browser. Let's open it in browser. Can you tell me, or just go ahead, open your RE frameworks in your machines and read out whatever the variables or arguments that you're seeing. That's fine. You can just go ahead and read out. We have something called, okay, I'll go with framework.
Transaction item.
What is it, Pratyusha?
Transaction item.
Transaction item. Okay. This is it a variable or a argument?
Variable. Variable.
Transaction item. See, this is one item that we are currently working on.
Hmm.
So yesterday we worked with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Now which one is a transaction item? Which number is a transaction item?
One. I mean, item which we were working. One.
So every item will be transaction item. So
Yeah.
it should have the transaction item must be assigned to that particular variable, then it will be a transaction item. Simple. Okay. Next one.
Transaction number.
Okay. Transaction number is like an index value. Index to maintain which item are we executing. So here, this will be used mostly when we are not using queues. Mostly helpful when we are not using queues. Why? Because when we are using queues, irrespective of the transaction number, we will always pick one item from the orchestrator. Is it right?
Yes.
So this we will have more use of it when we are working with something like data rows. Now, if I want to know which item I am working on, transaction number will tell me like, okay, I'm for the first time it will be one, and it transaction number will be incremented. So this will be incremented whenever to get a new item every time. Okay. Now, if I want to have, so if the execution is running on the first time, let's say that we have something like a data rows or data table. For the first time when it's executing, what will be the transaction number?
0.
Okay, after completion of one item, what will be the transaction number?
1. It will increment.
Yeah. So where the transaction number will be incremented? Okay, now we understood that it will be incremented, but where will it will be incremented?
In set transaction process.
Exactly. Incremented in workflow, set transaction process. And moreover, this will one catch is this will increment only at two stages or at two types, or what you can say, something like this. Okay, at two transitions this will increase. What are those two transitions? At what states it will increase? When process is successful and process is a business rule exception, or transaction item is a business rule exception, then only it will increment. If it is system exception, then based on retry, it will increment. For example, if I have a system exception, for example, there is a um, notepad. In that notepad, we are trying to write a number. Notepad got closed. Okay. Now it will reopen notepad in the init state. It will reopen notepad in the init state. Here, the transaction number will still be same because it's not incremented. The retry counter is not expired. Okay, current retry counter is not expired, so it will still be same value and it will try to reprocess again. For example, in set transaction status, if the retry status or retry number is closed in set transaction status, see carefully. Here retry current transaction also we need to see. Okay, now it will check if the retry is this if the current retry number is greater than 0. If it is max retries is reached, then it will retry, or if it is not reached, then it will have the same number. Can you see here transaction number is incremented here? If the transaction number max retries are not reached, this will not increment. See here it's incrementing when max retries is reached. If max retries are not reached, next in queue retry is available, then it will be incremented. Or if it is not available, retry counter, where is it? Somewhere no retry, this is no retry. Okay, see here, this is retry. But I really doubt one thing. Why is it incrementing every? Okay, this is the other thing. See, this is retry number and this is retry increment or in transaction number. So see here, if the retry number gets incremented and for example, if continuously three system exceptions occur, okay, if the increment or if the retry number is like if it is maximum, then we are incrementing the transaction number. So let's assume that retry value is 3, then how many times will it check for that retry number?
3 times.
It will check 4 times actually, because initially the retry number value will be 0.
0. Okay.
Okay, so that's the first execution. Now since it is 0, now this will be incremented to increment +1. Okay, see here, if it is greater than 0, then it's checking if it is greater than or equal to max retry number. So until and unless it reaches the maximum retries, it will retry. So if it need to maximum third time is the maximum time it should retry. So how many executions will happen altogether for a single transaction item if the retry is available?
4.
4, including 0th time, 0, 1, 2, 3. Only 4 times it
Yeah.
will execute. Okay. Now tell me one more item, one more variable. But did you understand how we are maintaining transactions with indexes? What is the main thing that will maintain the index? What is the main variable?
Transaction number.
Transaction number.
Exactly. Okay. Next one. Give me
Con,
one more.
con, config.
Config. Okay. See, here we need to load settings on where should we have all the details. For example, um, let's open config file. In config file, there are files. We'll also see that in the files place. This is workflow and these are arguments, folders, and inside framework we have something called or we have something called data. Inside data we have input folder, output folder, temp folder, and config.xlsx. Okay, see, one thing I would like to tell, each and everything here are used only to help our execution, nothing else. If you don't want to keep it, you can just remove it and you can execute. Even that will work. Like we have already created the code for it. We really no need to use all this RE framework. But why are we using? To have the standard structure. If we know what to place where, and this should be placed only here, then I will be able to understand all the details. So in config, we will have 3 sheets. First sheet is settings. Okay, constants, assets. Okay, so this config is a dictionary item, dictionary value. So do you know what is a dictionary? How dictionary will be available? It will have a key or it will have a word and it will have a meaning, right? So in the same way, dictionary also will have a key and a value. Will you, so understand one thing, one key will have only one value. You cannot have duplicate keys in a dictionary. Understood or not?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's see over here. In the settings page, we will give what is the orchestrator queue name which we need to execute, and what is the business process name. This comes in our what can we say? This comes in the logs, and in the constants, these are like pretty static values. Here you can see log messages, something like get transaction data log message, processing transaction number, getting transaction error. So what is the prefix of this log? And if there are exception screenshots folder path, this should be available in the screenshots, exception screenshots folder. So where is this folder? Can you see this folder in the project? Exception screenshots. We don't have it, but if there is any exception of any error, this will be automatically created. Exception screenshots. So these will not change in our project. These are pretty static. So if there is anything that is static which we are not changing, then it should be placed in constants. And max return number we have discussed, right? That we are checking in set transaction status. See, must be 0 if we are working with orchestrator queues. If greater than 0, robot will retry the same transaction item which failed with the system exception. Must be an integer value. So if I want to set retry for any particular item, then where should I place it? Where should I update?
in this field.
At value,
Yes, you need to update in the value of the for the key max retry number. So if I want to retry it 2 times, it should be 2. Understood?
Yes.
Now there will be a question. Okay, boss, now you have max return number 2, but business is coming back and saying that I want to have it dynamically. But if I keep it in the code in this Excel in this config, I need to redeploy the code every time I make a change in this config file. So how can I make sure that this value is dynamic? What can be the various options?
So we can put the value in orchestrator assets
Exactly,
and put the asset name.
exactly. So this retry number you can directly move into orchestrator assets, and you can create a new asset and you can map it. Okay, so that is one way. Now here in the settings, you are just mentioning like what is the folder place. For example, if there is separate data folder, what is it? And if there are any settings, we need to mention what is it. One more thing, credentials. We will have orchestrator credentials, right? In
Yes.
orchestrator, we have credential type. Um,
Yes.
we have an asset type of credential. So one thing that you need to observe is credential asset name should always be in the settings page. There is also a reason for it. Now, when we are loading all our assets, it will be happening in init all settings. Okay, what it will take, it will create a new object. It will take all the config sheets and it will load constants and settings. But if you see here, initializing assets, it is using get asset activity. Now, for a credential, how many values will you get?
Two
2.
two
to
values.
What are those?
Username and
username and
password.
password.
Exactly. Now in get orchestrator set, you don't have two values. That's the reason if you mention credential name in the asset, credential asset name in the asset, this will throw error that get orchestrator asset will not be able to pick credentials. It will be able to pick only three types. What are those? What are the other three types of assets?
Think int.
String, integer,
Mhm.
bool.
integer, string, and boolean.
Yeah.
Okay, so it will be able to pick all the three assets and it will be able to store. But if it is orchestrator, then it need to go in and place it as asset value. Like we will just mention it as a key value. Okay, now we'll save it. Now, what is the next one? I'm sorry. So dictionary values. So we will store all our use it to store all settings, constants, assets in one single dictionary. Now tell me one thing. If there are two keys, for example, here I have an asset name like max return number. I'll just take an example. Okay, max return number only, and the asset name in the orchestrator is also same. Okay, now we will have only, so here I will mention it as 3. Okay, now we can have only one key, right? But the key value here, return number is here this is the same value, and here also we have the same value. So which one will be the final value out of all 3? Which one will be the final value out of all 3? Just give it a check. Now see here in the init all settings, first we are loading settings and constants. So what it will do, first it will read from here and it will assign max return number to 3. Okay, now it will go into constants. In constants you have the same value, so it will assign max return number to 2. Now in the assets, it's coming with max return number to max return number. So what will be the final value?
Asset value.
Assets.
Asset key only, or asset value. Whatever we mentioned in the orchestrator asset, that will be the final value. Okay, so this will always take the precedence. First settings will be loaded, next constants and assets. If there is any key present here, it will be replaced by the value over here. Okay, so we are taking time, but please understand that this required time. Next one.
Next one was retry number that you have already explained it.
So retry number, again, retry number, we will be having that in the, so let's just see it. Where is it? This is our UiPath variables. Okay, main value variables. So see here, retry number, this is currently 0. Okay, so this number will be incremented. Okay, retry number is different from max retry number. Max retry number will be available in in our config sheet. Retry number is a variable that will be there as a global variable. This is a global variable. Understood? Difference between max return number and return number. Can you tell me? Kalin, can you try? What is the difference between return number and max return number?
Yeah, retry number will be available in global, and then max retry number will be available in config page or config sheet.
I need a better explanation of how you tell this answer. Why it is used. Thank God it's recording. Anyone can try? Anyone else wants to try? Okay. See, max retry number will be a constant value that decides how many times it should retry. So retry number will give you what is the current retry number. Is it 0th retry number, or is it the first retry, or is it the second retry, and is it third retry? This value will be incremented, retry number. But max return number will be constant. It will tell you how many times it should, what is the bottle, what is the end for that retry, where should you stop. Okay, done.
Yes, yes, got it.
Okay, next is transaction fields, transaction ID, and transaction field 1 and field 2. So here uh, we'll keep value of retry count for current transaction. Okay, next transaction ID. So we'll see all the four: transaction ID, transaction data, transaction field, transaction field 1 and field 2. See, this transaction field 1 and field 2 doesn't have any specific reason. It can be a custom value. For example, in our row, this is our requirement, right? In our requirement, okay. Let's take an example that in this particular beverages, okay, let me take seasonings. Okay, see here, every product is a transaction item. Let's assume that every product is a transaction item. This complete table is a transaction data. Complete input table is transaction data. Okay. Now here transaction ID is a custom field for current transaction item. So when we are working with transaction number or transaction index 1, here transaction number 1 from this sheet, what will be the ID? If transaction indexes, let's mark as index. Index will start from 0, 1. So if I go till end, Control D, so here what is transaction number? Let's assume what is transaction number, transaction ID, transaction field 1, transaction field 2. What are these for this particular data table and transaction data? Okay, transaction data is complete table. Okay, what is transaction data? This complete table. Transaction ID can be transaction item, item of, for now this is product ID. For a different table it will be different value. So this is something that we need to represent for ourselves, that we are working on one particular ID. This transaction field can be something like transaction item of price. Okay, this can be transaction, it can be anything. Item of product. Okay, it can be, the first field can be product and second field can also be price. Okay, transaction number is current index. Okay, now tell me one thing. When the transaction index is 0, what will be transaction data?
Zero.
Wrong. It will always be table.
Yeah, it's table one, but that row.
No, you're telling about transaction item. So
Okay.
when the transaction number is 0, transaction row is this particular index, this particular row, complete row. Okay, complete row at 0th index. Okay, now what is transaction ID?
Three.
Correct. How? Because we are assigning transaction ID as product ID. Now what is transaction field 1?
Price.
Price? What is it? What is the value?
And is zero.
10.
Sorry,
10.
10.
10.
10.
What is product?
Aniseed syrup.
Aniseed syrup. Now let's assume that we have completed 4 items and now the transaction index is 5. Now tell me, now tell me, what is transaction ID?
ID will be 44.
ID will be 44. Good.
Transaction data will again the same, the complete table.
Yes.
An item will be the row, that complete row.
Complete row at index 5.
Index 5, yes.
Okay.
And field one, transaction field 1 is 19.45.
Okay.
And field 2 is grandma's boysenberry spread.
19.46. No, this is glow amalgam.
Oh, sorry.
Gula.
Gula Malka. Yeah.
Okay. Now, did you understand how these values are coming?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's also take simple other example. Now, here, let's assume that we have list of files. Okay. So, in the data, in the input, we have all the files. Placeholder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Now the requirement is to place or to move these files into output folder. That's the only requirement, nothing else. Okay. Now what are our details? So we just need to see our details. Okay. We'll use the same properties, or you can just say we will use the same method and we'll try to identify the details. Okay. Now here is our seasonings table. These are the items that we need to check. Yeah. So I'm just mentioning for the ease. I'm just mentioning these. Okay. Transaction number, transaction data should be on the top. Transaction number and transaction item is something that's making a difference. Control minus. Okay. Now tell me, the input is, so the requirement is to move all the files from one folder to other folder. How will you do it? What is transaction data?
So it will be
All the files.
all the files.
List of all the files
List of all the files.
or array of all the files. Okay. So this transaction number will be at different things. 0 now here. Sorry. So when the transaction number is 0, okay, you can understand that from top this is 0th index and this is the last index. So or else you can also, yeah, this is fine. 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay, you can take it like this. Can I place it over here anyway? No, I cannot, but just understand that 0th index is always the first index. So what is transaction item?
The current file which we are moving.
Understand it properly. Current, it's not the current file, it's the file path.
Hmm.
Okay, file path at 0th index. So what is the file path? Copy as path. So this is the transaction item. Okay, now what is transaction ID?
It could be name of the file.
It can be name of the file, but if it is something that we need to represent. So can I just mention, right, path dot get file name of transaction item? So what it will give me?
The file name.
File name of the
Yeah,
transaction item.
so this will just give me the file name, like placeholder copy 2.txt. So what is transaction field 1 and field 2?
Individual fields.
I would say there is no need to represent anything for it. If we want to write some data or utilize it, we can use. If you don't want to use it, you can just ignore them. And even transaction ID also you can ignore. Okay, why? Because we are able to get the index and we are able to get the transaction item. We can use these two, right, to do any other activity if we want to move. Do we need other things?
No.
Okay, so always remember important items are transaction data, transaction number, and transaction item. Transaction ID, field 1 and field 2 are custom fields that we may use or may not use. That's completely our understanding. Okay, understood the difference or not?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
one more example. I have an array. I have an array of 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5, comma 6. Okay, so this is my transaction data. You can take. Now, just tell me. My requirement is this should be, or every number should be multiplied by itself, and it should provide me a result. Okay, so this is my requirement basically. So what is transaction data?
Array. That particular array.
Complete array. Okay, so what is transaction? Okay, let's say the transaction number is 3. Now when the transaction number is 3, what is transaction item?
Four.
4.
fourth item, because it will start from 0, it will go to fourth. So it will be 4. Do we need transaction ID field or field 2? Do we need them?
No.
So you can just mention like nothing. Okay. So now are you able to understand and get the difference? So tell me one thing, is RE framework used only to work with orchestrator queues, or it can be used to work with anything?
We can work with anything.
How many of you got that concept just now? Like earlier you were just thinking that RE framework will be for queues only. Now you are able to understand it. How many of you comes into this category? Or you know this from the beginning?
No, I got it today.
We know this
So
beginning.
Oh, you know it from the beginning, Satish?
Yes, sir. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. It can be worked with APIs. It can be worked with
Hmm,
it can be worked with data tables also.
exactly. What about others? Okay, so let's come back. So custom field. So transaction field 1 is custom field, and transaction field 2 is also custom field. Okay. Now, do we have any other variables?
System exception and business exception.
Yes. System exception, business rule exception.
and there is a consecutive
Retry
systems
number,
exception. Consecutive
consecutive
system
system
exception.
exception. Okay, see, these last one came into picture only in the latest version of 2021.10. So this is a new update. So what exactly this is meant is, for example, if there is a system exception in the init state, if there is a system exception in the init state which we are not able to handle, then where is this? So see here, this is not available in the previous versions of RE framework. So this will be used in the latest version. So what exactly it's trying to do is, it will check if the consecutive retry number, if it is less than, again, it will work like max retry number. Okay, so this retry number will be used for transaction items. This will be used for complete process. For example, if in the init state we are not able to, we are failing, or if the login is failing, something like that, then we can work with this. Understood? And system exception, this is a type of exception again, can take information of all exception details. We'll see in detail. And business rule exception, this contains info for custom exceptions. Okay, understood? Yes, no, all right. What is your answer?
Yes, sir, I
Vajrang,
understand.
Yes, go ahead, tell me.
that consecutive one, there is already system exception, right? In it also.
Which one? Config?
This one, consecutive system exception.
Yeah, this is an integer value.
Okay.
It will be an integer value. Okay. Okay, fine. So we are up with the time. Can we take some 15 more minutes?
Yes, Vajrang.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So here we have completed till our values with, that is arguments. So two important arguments that we have is orchestrator queue name, and the second one is orchestrator folder name. These are the two arguments that we will have in the main arguments: orchestrator queue name, orchestrator folder name. Okay, so let's try to understand this one. Now, when we are working from orchestrator or from, let's try to sign in. Let's see if we can do it. Okay, so if I want to dynamically send queue name, for now, where is the queue name by default?
In settings,
In settings, right? But in future, maybe business asked me that leave that queue and create a new queue and use that queue. So if I have this argument, we can send, or you can also tell like I need to use 5 queues. So this bot should execute with any queue that I give you. Like for example, there is QA, QB, QC. I need to execute items from QA. Then I can send the QA as an input argument to the job. If I want to run QB, I can send it as an input argument. So if I want to have a dynamic queue names, or if I want to give dynamic queue name as an input, then I can utilize this one. Or if it is not given, if it is empty, then what, from where it will pick the item?
settings in
Exactly,
config file. So
exactly. Now, this also works in the same way. By default, folder name will be default or anything that we give. But if we want to dynamically change it, dynamically give it during runtime, we can use it. So is it mandatory to provide these two details?
no,
Runtime of job. Okay. Next, we'll take few files, important files. So see here, in the documentation, you will have RE framework documentation. In data, in the input folder, maintain all the data that's required that we can use as an input. So where is this? In the input folder, maintain all files that can be used as input, that are input values. So it can be a one Excel, can be multiple input, multiple files. So for example, in one Excel, you have multiple rows. So you can take complete data table depending upon the input and depending upon how we write, this will be changed. So output, final result, files, some reports, or if you want to add or move the files to this output folder, you can. And temp, if you need to utilize some random folder, if we want to utilize a separate place before moving to output, then we can use it. Let's take an example. Now here we have all these files, right? Now I need to add date and time into this file. Okay, but the catch is multiple robots are working on this folder. So what I will do, I will take this one, but it will pick item only for input. So it will take this one and I will first place it in the temp folder. Okay, now this will not be available like this is not in the input folder, so no one will pick it. So I can just go ahead and add current date and time, current date time, and save it. Okay, now since this is completed, I can move it to which folder? The activity is completed. Where can I move it to? Output. Okay, did you understand why temp will be used? No? Yes or no?
Version I not understand. Can you explain on?
So, see, let's assume that Satish, you and me have one single input folder. We both need to pick items from input only. Okay, so at a time you came and I also came to this particular folder, and you are working on copy 2, I am also working on copy 2. Don't you think that data will be duplicated?
Yes, duplicate.
Satish, be on mute for some time.
Version. Okay.
Okay, now you are also working on copy 2, I am also working on copy 2. Now how to avoid this one?
Okay.
So what I will do, immediately after I got this particular file, I'll move it to my temp folder.
Okay.
Now, will you be able to see that file in the input?
No, I'm not able to see in that input.
But one thing is, I cannot move it to output folder because I haven't completed my activity in it.
Yes.
Okay, so this can be like a temporary place where you can store the files and you can finally move it to output if the data is completed, if the item is execution
Okay.
is completed.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah,
Yes.
but
Yes, sir.
Vajrang for second bot, it will get the exception, right?
Let it get the
IO exception.
see. Let it get. By the time if
Okay.
I move, but what will happen? So what Satish will do? Okay, I got the exception. I will pick the next item.
Mm-hmm.
Satish can pick the next item, right? Right or not, Krishna?
Yes.
Yeah, it he can be pick the next item, but the first thing he need that file to get the some input.
But I'm already executing it.
So we cannot copy instead of the cut. Can we do copy?
If you copy, then same file will be executed by both members, right?
Okay.
See, you can use any business rule exception, but temp folder is to store some files temporarily to work.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you can use any business rule exception you want, or you can use any business case you want. You can even don't use temp. You can just read the file and you can delete it, and you can keep the whatever file data is there. You can keep it in the variable memory location. Even that can work. But the
Yeah.
usage
Okay.
of temp folder is to store some temporary files which cannot be placed in input or output. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now workflows, important things are main, and we will have some other folder called work framework. So all the predefined files will be available in framework only. So each and every earlier process also used to be outside, but now process also moved to framework in the new frameworks. Okay, so all the items that you see here will be available in framework. Can you just read out so that I can just place them, type them and keep. First one is init all settings, init all applications, set transaction status, get transaction item. Okay, process transaction item or process, then retry exception, retry current item, retry transaction item. Did I miss anything? Close all applications. Take screenshot. Kill process. Get transaction data. Get transaction item. Instead of this, get transaction data. Kill all process. Kill all process. So how many items do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So do we have all the items over here? We had. Now settings, init all settings will create a config. Main requirement is to create a config dictionary. Okay, so what init all settings will do, it will first initialize all the settings. So what is the use of init all applications?
It will initialize all the applications which we require.
Opens all applications that we require for automation. Okay, set transaction status. Sets current transaction either true or either success or failure or BRE. Okay, so each and every workflow has its own role and responsibility. Set transaction status will not assign or will not create config. Init all applications will not kill the process. Get transaction data, get one item to process. All processing steps will be here, must be here. Retry transaction item verifies if current item must be retried and sets variables accordingly. Close all applications. Only responsibility is to close all applications that we have opened. Take screenshot. Takes screenshot of current screen and store it at a file location. Kill all process. Code required to kill all required process for the process for our execution. Okay, so each and every file have their own uses and we should not write something. For example, we should not write take screenshot activities or take screenshot code inside init all settings. We should not write set transaction status code inside init all applications. So that is the reason they have already given all the steps for us. All we need to do is we need to write our custom logic in the process. If we are able to write our custom logic in the process, remaining things will work automatically. Understood? Yes or no? Give me an answer and we'll close today's meeting. Enough for today.
Yes, Vajra, understood.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And learned anything new for today?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Had all the issues clarified, issues or all the details about RE framework cleared out?
Yes,
Yes.
Vajra.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So we'll close it for today. Just understand, RE framework is the easiest thing that one can learn. Only thing is, no one will try to first understand what is the use of all these items. If you're able to understand variables and arguments, then it's like a simple cakewalk. Okay, so stopping the recording.